Hi, everyone. Once again, in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, I'm Peter Liciaga, your education activist, with my sister Mary Liciaga in California. We're doing another one of our live Skype casts, and we're talking about at-risk youth and is continuing our series of that. And this week, we're going to talk about basically creating a positive path for our youth and how important it is for us to create these paths for our youth so that when we discuss and uncover their dreams and a vision for them, we create some ideas for goals. And now we're going to create a path for them, the importance of that, creating that path. So Mary, how are you? Thank you so much for again, meeting with me this morning. I know you're preparing for your next marathon. You're going through some challenges, I know, physically. And I think you're right now struggling with pneumonia.
Yeah.
Well, you look great. Maybe it's the California sun or something like that. But you look great, and I love your hat. But I appreciate you for meeting with us this morning on the live cast. But yeah, I want to talk about about the pathway and how important that is in your work. How important it is to set youth on a certain path.
Right. Yes. Oh, it's important. I know when we have our engagement and we get the strengths of the youth, and then we try to pull out from them what their interests are and what their strengths are and what they're good at. It takes a while to build trust with them, and so it'll take some time. But once we're able to establish the strengths and what they're good at, then we can be able to help facilitate, a path for them to go towards their goals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I remember in one of our earlier conversations, you had mentioned that the youth, and based on your experience, the youth, they want direction, they want guidance, they want it. Okay, it's so important that once we've established, where they are, and then we've established an idea of where we all agree that they may want to go based on their dreams and their hopes and aspirations. And so once we get there, it's really, really important that we let them know that there is a path, that there's a guide, and that this is the path, and I'm here to help you, support you. And
Right.
but we're going to work, and we're going to stay on this path. And we all come off of that path, and it's not a question of what do you do if you get off the path, or what do you do when you do. And that's what we're there for. We're helping them in a very
Right.
intelligent way and compassionate way to stay on that path. And from your experience, is that very important to make sure they have that path there, and that it's always little by little, every day, every engagement with them, every meeting with them, to help make that clearer what that path is? Is that?
Oh, yeah. It's really, it's important to keep their motivation up, to remind them every time we have a meeting, we read the mission statement so we remember, why we're meeting and where we're headed, and the purpose of the plans to, like the whatever there, because everybody has actions to help that youth to meet the mission statement, so we meet all the time to remind, everybody where we're helping this youth to get to.
Right. Yeah, I know that we're going to talk in the future about how important it is to have the right people around you. Now, what is your experience? What do you do? Let's say, for instance, a youth. You've done all this. You've started the youth. We've talked about where they are, and we've talked about some dreams, some visions, some hopes, some of the challenges. We've created some goals for them, some action steps that they're going to take. What do you do if they step off there? What? Let's say, for instance, if I'm a youth, and and my issue is really, I lose my temper, and I get very destructive. I destroy the house. Okay, and so we've established some goals. Okay, this week, okay, your goal is to maybe, going from 20 outbursts, maybe you're going to drop it down to maybe one or two. And I've had 25 outbursts this week. Okay, I'm obviously off track. How would you create a conversation about that with me, and then and reminding me, and what are some things that you do?
Well, Kyle, we got off track, and so So something obviously triggered for you to have this tantrum. We'll call it.
Okay.
Right. So what happened like right before that to find out what that trigger was?
Mm-hmm.
So that we can identify it.
Right.
And see like where did that trigger come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more than likely some deep unmet need from like childhood.
Right.
So okay, so let's uncover that and try to nurture that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of sit in that. Maybe it was something painful that had happened when you were a youth, and you have to kind of acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
See it, embrace it, to be able to help heal that, so that you don't keep going back to that. Otherwise you'll keep being triggered every time something comes up that relates to that issue. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It also reminds me of that the outbursts, the tantrums, are symptomatic, are a symptom of something that's an underlying issue. That's not the heart of it. I think a lot of times we parents and workers that work with at-risk youth, or a youth that just happens to be going through a season of challenge, a lot of times we look at the behavior and we focus so much on the behavior that we forget that's only a symptom of what's going on deeper.
Right, exactly. So we don't, so whatever you focus on grows. So if you focus on that behavior, it's going to grow. But let's go underneath that behavior. What's going on? Why is, what's underneath that?
Right. Yeah. No. When I teach self-defense, and we talk about how close does danger have to get to you before you realize you're in danger, and at what point do you move to action? So that principle is applicable to any situation. For instance, me as a youth, if I have this outburst, how many things have to happen before I am aware that I am going to have an outburst? And then once I have an outburst, how far into my outburst do I have to go before I realize and am aware that I need to pull out of I need to do something? And what is that thing that I have to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's all an individual thing, because some kids, can never get out of it. That's kind of like their culture,
right?
Or they don't want to, or they're stuck in it, or they're afraid of change, or whatever the case is. So, it's really hard to change.
That it is, and I know that's. I mean, I don't like to. I do my best not to sugarcoat it. Sometimes I'll make things sound like it's easy. Anyone can do it. But I really don't want to say that this is easy. That we've talked about sometimes it takes 12 months, it takes years to undo damage, and it's there's some things issues that I have that they'll always be there, and I just have to monitor. And I remember many years ago, I had one student that had attempted suicide a couple of times that summer. And they had brought her to me, and I worked with her. And at some point, she had asked me, "Well, what do I do? I went through this experience in my life, and every morning I get up and I feel that." And I said, "Well, you know what? That may never change, but every morning you have to get up and decide, today I'm going to fight, and I'm going to just fight, because it may always be that challenge where you're going to have to break through and fight past it, and it may never be a time where you're going to have to drop your guards." So I know even with my own challenges that I always have to remind myself that I'm always on a battlefield, and whenever I drop my guards, whenever I relax, and that's the opportunity where a situation will take root, and then all of a sudden find an opportunity to trigger, maybe a small little thing will trigger that. But always bringing someone back on that path, I think it's really crucial, because we all get off track. It's not a question if, it's when. So the key is getting back on track. And what are some other things that you've found that worked with you that bring them back on track?
I know, like going with my own personal. I keep going back to my personal, because I have a lot of personal experience, with having raised at-risk youth, and what I did just for me, like as a parent, like, because my my kids, two of my kids were suicidal,
Right.
and so, you know, during like therapy sessions, like whenever they would say stuff about me and my behavior and how I was, and I would own it. I would own it and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm really, really sorry about that. I can't change that. I can't change it. That's a fact. And but we're here where we're at, and I'm not that way anymore. So how can we go forward through that? So validating them.
Right.
Is really important.
Right. Yeah. So I guess helping them, well, validating them first of all that it's a challenge. They fell off track. Let's get back on. Okay.
Right.
Let's just get right back on track. And I think that's also really important for the youth to hear that you got off track. Let's get back on track, and that's okay. Let's get back.
Right.
And this is one thing that I wanted to make sure people hear is that we got to have compassion. We've got to continue to have this level of forgiveness, and be a guide for them, but be someone that they can trust. We build a relationship with, but that we're there to forgive them. And they need to hear that, even though it wasn't against me, not have been against us. It's against themselves, but they need to hear this idea of forgiveness. I forgive you. At the same time, gives them permission to forgive themselves and to get back on track.
And then also reminding them of their actions and what they've done is not who they are.
Right.
It's just, a reaction to something that's probably really painful inside of you, and you're acting it out. And that helps you to feel like you have some kind of control,
Right.
Where when, whatever happened that caused you to be this way, you were powerless at that time. But now you have power, and so, how are you going to direct that power?
Right, yeah. And I think that another thing I wanted to make sure that someone like me working with youth, what has to happen, what the work that I have to do, and this week I mentioned to one of our assistant instructors, the idea of due diligence, and I was telling them that I'm here if you need help, I'm here to serve you. But don't mistake my desire to serve as a crutch that absolves you from your responsibility of doing due diligence and doing the research, understanding the information, and really meditating on it, and then applying it, learning your lessons, and moving forward. But I'm here to serve. So I think that those of us that do work with youth, it's important that we go out there, see what resources are out there, what people are doing, what's working, what's not working, because there's no one answer for everyone. And so it's important that we do work like this, and that we're definitely, this is not an exhaustive project of what there is to do for at-risk youth. This is just a conversation that I want people to know about. But it's important that we that do work with youth, whether you're a parent, an educator, a guidance counselor, a psychologist, a therapist, that we continue to communicate and do due diligence. And because we're there, we're going to be right alongside these children, these youth, because those of us that are called to do it, whether we do it on purpose or it just happens that we're chance and God has put us there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I tell families, I won't work harder than them. I'll work with them side by side, but I won't do their work for them, and I don't have a magic wand, and I'm in it with you, but not for you.
Well, exactly. But that's it. We have all we need. A nice little snippet there, and I'll let you have the rest of your day so you can rest up. I appreciate you for coming in. Now, Mary and I are talking about having a first guest, and there's a gentleman that Mary works with. And Mary, tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he worked in the gang field for like 20, 30 years. So he's really, really familiar and cultured with working with youth who have been in gangs. And, he has this way about him, and he's very charismatic, and he has this way about him about being able to reach these youth. I call him the Buddha man.
The Buddha man?
Yeah, the Buddha man, yeah. He's this just short little guy, kind of looks like Mario Brothers, he's just silent and just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
powerful, in my opinion. You know, he just has this matter of fact way kind of approach with people, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and he just, you know, I work with families with him that, you know, in neighborhoods that, you know, that I wouldn't go to by myself, you know, and
Right.
I felt safe when I'm with him, and he's this little white guy, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I'd love to hear his reason for doing what he's doing because I think that's his motivating factor that keeps him
Yeah.
going through the storms.
Right. He's like me. We both have the same kind of thing where God is our employer, you know, and we just suit up and show up and,
Ah,
you know, get the job done.
suit up and show up. You have all these nice little phrases that are new to me because from your world and literally and figuratively your world. But I like that, suit up and show up. I got to do that with my. I always tell my instructors, you cinch your belt, you bow in, and you turn it on. Showtime. But you
Yep.
suit up and show up, and then that's I like that.